Hello and welcome to a new video. Today I thought I would talk about some of my 2024 reading goals. I know we're already getting towards the end of January, but I finally have some time to sit down and chat about some of my goals. I don't do a lot of chatty videos like this where I'm not talking about literal books. But I just wanted to chat and tell you about some of the goals I have for reading this year. I think I did this video last year too. I honestly can't really remember. But anyway, my very first goal is I want to read more historical romances. I have all of these historical romances. Should I turn my little lights on? Did that up the ambiance? I have so many historical romances that I want to read. And I barely read any last year when I would actually consider it like my favorite genre, or at least one of my top favorite genres. And I didn't read any of them last year, so I would very much like to read more of them this year. There's a lot of backlist books that I want to read. Just so many that I own. I want to catch up on Joanna Shupe's backlist and her newer books. There's a lot of Tessa Dare books I want to read. There's a lot of authors up on my shelf that I own multiples of, but I haven't actually caught up or read any of them. So I plan to read as many as I can this year, and I plan on doing a series that I think I'm gonna call Backlist Babes, because I just feel like that's a really cute little title, where I will read backlist books, romance books specifically. I'll probably start with historical romance because I have a lot of author duplicates. I'm looking, I've got multiple Sophie Jordans. I think I have a couple Vanessa Riley's. I can't think of any other. There's definitely multiples on here of famous big authors. I've got multiple books and I haven't read any of them, so that's one of my goals. Kind of related to that, just in general, I did this a lot last year too, but I'd like to continue focusing more on backlist books, books that I own, books that have been out a while, basically. As exciting as new releases are, and I do want to get to some new releases, I'd like to focus more on what I have and not necessarily just getting the newest, brightest, shiniest book and reading that. I have so many books, and don't get me wrong, I do think I'm one of those people that I think collecting books and reading are kind of two separate hobbies, and say what you want about, overconsumption and all of that, I get it, but also I am just a collector at heart. I love collecting things, whether it is books or Mickey Mouse ears or Loungeflies or Pop Funkos, the little pins. I've been collecting Disney pins since I was 12 years old, so I have always been very much a collector, and I'm okay with that. That's just who I am. That's part of who I am. And that being said, I obviously have a lot of books behind me. You can only see a little bit of it, but there are 3 of these shelves and they're tall. So again, this is a goal I had last year as well, but I would like to read as many books on my shelf as possible. Now that doesn't mean that I have to be reading a physical copy of that book. What I did a lot last year is I would kind of glance at my shelf and look and see what I had, what I felt like reading, and then I would pick up an audiobook of it, because that was the more realistic way for me to be reading, because I could listen to it at work a little bit, or just was the method of reading that I felt like doing at the time. So I am still looking forward to doing that this year. I have so many books, so many series that I want to get to. The video that will come either, I think right after this one, I want to talk about the series that I am trying to get to this year. There's so many of them. Anyway, my next goal is I want to read more comic books. Last year I did pretty good, but I think the year before is when I read a lot more comics. I think I kind of slowed down this year because I read so many of these series that became my heart and soul, my favorite series, and I was like, where do I go from here? I've read most of Scarlet Witch's comics that she appears in, not by no means all of them, but I've read a lot of them, and I'm like, okay, love them, great. I read all of Miles Morales's main comics. I have the omnibus here that's 1,000 pages. I read all of that. I actually read that a couple years ago, but regardless. And then I read the Lemire, I don't know how to say it, run of the Moon Knight comics, and that was like top tier, some of the best writing I've ever seen. I read, my mind is blanking on the author's name. Usually I remember it. But regardless, I read the Empire series, which brings in a lot of different characters. Scarlet Witch, her kids, Hulkling, we've got Fantastic Four, Thor, Iron Man, all these things. So I read those, and then I just kind of came to this point where I'm like, okay, so, oh, and I read that this year I did read the Spider-Woman comics, that series I've talked about recently. Loved that, but like I kind of got to this point where I'm like, I've read all these books that I love and I don't know how I'm going to like top it. And so like I'll start something, like I've tried reading Miss Marvel and it like doesn't hit the same way for me. Like I need to find ones that I'm going to love. I did recently read a Guardians of the Galaxy comic that was really good and I do want to finish that series out. But I just need to find a comic that I like absolutely am enamored with again. So I want to try and read more comic books this year. And in relation to that, I think in general I would just like to read more graphic novels. I think it's such an interesting and valuable storytelling method and I really, really enjoy it. So I'd like to finish the Lore Olympus series and more along those lines. I think a lot of the times when you get to graphic novels, sometimes it'll kind of, at least the recommendations I see, will kind of shift to a younger audience, which are fun and great, but I wouldn't mind a more mature audience. Like comic books, I think a lot of those tend to run more mature depending on the character. Maybe I could read some Daredevil comics, that's unrelated but made me think of it, and just read some more stuff. If the Avatar series ever came out with more graphic novels, I'd be first in line. But yeah, I would like to read more graphic novels as well as comic books. This is sort of a more general goal, and I think this has been a goal every single year that I've ever made reading goals, but I really, really want to finish some series this year. I have so many series that either I own in completion, I haven't started, or I have started and haven't finished. So if I could just finish anything, that would be really, really cool. Specifically, I think one of the ones highest up on my list is the Throne of Glass series. I know everybody loves Throne of Glass. I like Throne of Glass. I don't love it like I love ACOTAR, but I want to be in on it. I want to like love it like everybody else does. I just have read the first like 4 or 5, and I was just like, it's. I think the theme and the tone switches so much that I was like, can we just pick a lane? But I want to be where the people are. I want to be part of it. So I would like to finally finish the Throne of Glass series. That's my #1 series I want to finish. But in general, there are a lot of series I've started and not finished. So I would like to work on those. I will have probably a whole thing about that in my like TBR video because there's so many that I want to work on. The next thing on my list is I would like to annotate more books. So when I am filming this, it's the middle of January. I have no idea what the date is today. The very first book I read this year is I did a reread of Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalco because it is one of my favorite books of all time, and I annotated it because I exchanged it with a friend. I gave her the annotated copy, and she's never read it before, and so she can read it with my very valuable comments. And then she annotated a copy of Beach Read and gave it to me so I can read Beach Read for the first time with her comments. And I just realized I had so much fun annotating the book. I want to do that, like, not every single book I read, but honestly, just always have a highlighter. I have these really cute, like, pastel highlighters. Don't have the yellow one anymore because our foster dog ate it. How a dog eats a highlighter? I don't know. I mean, she didn't eat the entire thing, but it's dead. And I just loved highlighting. I loved writing little notes. And like I said, I don't think I will do it in every single book, but if there's a line that I really, really love, why not highlight it so I remember, like, next time I'm looking through the book, like, oh, that's the quote that I loved from this book. That's why I loved this book. Some people will say, like, but it's the value of the book, blah, 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 blah. and like, oh, but then you can't resell it or you can't trade it. I just don't really care. One, I feel like most of the time half price books would still take it even if there's some like highlighting in it, like, because who cares? And two, for the most part, these books aren't going anywhere. Like, yes, I do unhauls every so often, but most of the time when I'm unhauling a book, it's one that I'm no longer interested in picking up to read at all. So it's more rare that I pick up a book, read it, and then unhaul it. So I just want to annotate more books and live my life. And then my last goal is pretty straightforward. I want to read 100 books this year. I don't really care if they're rereads or they're new reads or they're audiobooks or graphic novels, ebooks. I want to read it all. I want to read 100, and I want to read more books that I love. I have been loving doing book clubs. I guess you could call that a goal too. I want to continue doing book clubs, I think, which is hilarious because a couple years ago one of my reading goals was to not participate in book clubs, but I have found a new love again for book clubs. I want to read books that I enjoy. I want to pick consciously books that I think I am going to love and not just because they're popular. And I think it's going to be really fun, and I can't wait to read the next 100 books of 2024. So I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what some of your reading goals are for the year. I am very much looking forward to picking up lots of new favorites, I hope. So come check out this channel all year to hear me chat about them and all things Disney and I don't know, more stuff probably. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I will talk to you guys next time. Bye. And some people are like, well, the value of the book, whatever, fuck you, they're $20. Why did I say that?